Twitter, have you given any consideration to deleting your account, to just walking away from this platform you've been so critical of?
Well, you know, if you weren't fake, I would not even think about it. I would do that in a heartbeat.
I'm real,
but
sir.
the news is fake. If you look at what gets printed in newspapers, if only the public could understand where, you know, they're reading a story and they think it's real, and it's not real in so many cases. And I'm not saying in every case. You have some great journalists. You have some journalists that I have great respect for. But largely, I find, at least in a political sense, there's so much fake news, it's disgraceful. What they're doing is tantamount to monopoly, you can say. It's tantamount to taking over the airwaves. Can't let it happen. Otherwise, we're not going to have a democracy. We're not going to have anything to do with a republic.
On this episode of Just Informed Talk, President Trump signs an executive order going after the social media fascists who are trying to shut down our movement. Plus, Q has been on fire today, telling us everything that's happening as we see actual fires burning down whole city blocks in Minnesota. There is so much going on. You guys are going to want to stick around to hear that and a whole lot more. So stick around and check it out. Hi, and welcome to another episode of Just Informed Talk. I'm your host, Craig. Thanks for joining me. And you guys know I start by saying, please come here and hit that subscribe button if you haven't done it yet. If you have, thank you. But if you haven't done it yet, please, it's easy. Come here, click the big red subscribe button. Make sure you hit the bell for notifications and select all so you get notified as soon as all these videos get posted. Because look, they're trying to put channels like this out of business. They're trying to suppress this content, and we have to amplify it. That's why I ask you guys to do that. Today, we have a lot of information to cover. We're picking up right where we left off. We left off at Q post 4334 is the last post we didn't look at. We looked at the post before that. So we're going to pick up right there, right where we left off, and we have a big show for you today. You guys have probably turned on the news and seen them, peddling fear, putting videos of rioters burning down Target stores and entire city blocks and telling you they're just, peaceful protesters. Well, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about other major stories too that the mainstream media doesn't want to talk about, like how they don't want to investigate the fact that there were all of these deaths caused by these seemingly negligent orders given by governors and mayors to place people at the highest risk next to and in the same buildings as other people who were contagious or had the virus. And we're going to talk about everything from that all the way to President Trump signing a social media order or an executive order on social media today. So there's a lot of stuff we're going to cover here. So you guys are going to want to stick around and check it out. Before we do that, just a quick reminder. Look, you guys probably have heard of this product now, but if you haven't downloaded it, installed it, and ran it on your desktop, laptop, or your smart device, you're really missing out on a great product. It's the Brave browser. It's free. It replaces your internet browser, whether it's Safari, Internet Explorer, Google Chrome. Get away from those big tech companies and check out this product. It blocks the ads. It helps make a contribution to this channel when you download it for free using the link in the description. So go check out Brave browser, and that's a great way to support the channel. Use the link in the description to download it today. Now, we're going to get into these latest Q posts because we have a lot of information to cover. We're going to start here with this Breitbart News article that Q points us to, talking about in Italy, 96% of coronavirus fatalities had other chronic illnesses. Think about that. And think about how the media has spent the last, I don't know, however many months telling you to look at Italy as the example and how that's what could happen here in the United States, and the expectation that that is what was going to happen here in the United States. As you turn on CNN, if you still watch that, which I'm sure most of you who here don't watch CNN, thankfully, but if you happen to be scrolling through channels, or as Tucker Carlson would say, stuck in an airport and have to look up at a screen and you see the running death toll on CNN's 24/7 news network, that's all you really need to know to understand what their priority is. And it's making you afraid and taking these, for the most part, completely unreliable numbers and putting them in your face every single day to convince you that this is going to come and get you. The invisible boogeyman is coming to get you because you haven't worn your face mask and you're not locking yourself under house arrest in your home, while the reporters at CNN aren't under house arrest, but you are. So anyway, you can read through this article. It's here, and it tells you a lot about the fact that you have people who were affected by this illness with a high comorbidity, such as, diabetes or something else that's a chronic disease, and that they're being counted as, victims of this plague, right? This pandemic. But at the same time, you look at the numbers for flu, influenza, and other things, and how they've dropped through the floor, right? So it just seems to me that there's a whole lot of overhyping what's happening here. But Q gives us a little bit of insight as we go further into these, saying the more you know. Q, the next one says, quarantine is when you restrict the movement of sick people. Tyranny is when you restrict the movement of healthy people. Q. So this is giving us an idea of what we're going to talk about here as we go forward into this episode. And I'll leave links to all these articles if you want to read them and get all the facts lined up. But for the sake of time, we're going to kind of go through these rather quick, and we're going to jump into the next one here. But remember, quarantine is when you put sick people under, a quarantine to keep them away from healthy people. It's not when you lock everyone in their house and put them under house arrest when they've done nothing wrong. That's tyranny, which is what they want. They want to control you. You're a serf. You're a peasant. You are nothing to them. You are just another cog in their machine. And that's the way they look at you. As Q said, they look at us like sheeple. So the next post Q wants us to look at here talks about this Newsweek article saying USA versus Japan reconcile with critical thinking. Q. Okay, so let's see what the article says. It talks about Japan ended the coronavirus emergency with only 850 deaths and no lockdown. Now, you can say what you want about this pandemic. You can say that, it's because Japan is a cleaner place maybe, or that they're a better ran society. Or do you have to sit back and ask the question, are all the numbers and statistics that were being presented by these fake news liars, by these Chinese communist-controlled World Health Organizations, and all of these other institutions of higher learning, are they skewed? And are they skewed to the degree that their numbers are not lining up with the reality of the situations? And that's something you have to ask yourself as a person, as a citizen of not just the United States here, but also of the world. Is this really what they're presenting to you? Because if a country like Japan can get through it with only 850 deaths and no lockdown, then how is it that we here in America have over 100,000 deaths and we've been on a lockdown since going back to, I guess, March, right? I don't know. Or I guess January, if you go back to the original orders to shut down international travel. But look, whatever you come to the conclusion of, that's for you. I'm not a doctor. This isn't medical advice. I'm just telling you that from my end, with what I'm seeing, it seems like the mainstream media was trying to hype this pandemic to try to create fear and panic to bring in the mail-in voting so that they could use the mail-in voting to steal the 2020 election, and at the same time remove the economic prosperity that was pushing President Trump's election, and alternately give China a boost, the country that they had sold us out to, our previous administration and politicians, wholesale. Basically, it sold us out. Hunter Biden, remember the $1.5 billion deal between Hunter Biden that nobody wants to talk about anymore? Everybody talks about Ukraine and Burisma, which is bad enough, right? Which is one of their hubs for I think, trafficking this, peddling this influence. But $1.5 billion from a Chinese communist bank to the son of the vice president, and now the guy trying to run the country again. Yeah, but nothing to see here. This is the same guy. Remember, let me remind you, Joe Biden, who went in front of China and told us that we need to integrate our societies. Oh, really? You want to? And he obviously wasn't talking about bringing American values to China. He was talking about integrating the values of the Communist Party onto America. So remember that. And just in case, the fake news is out there and says, oh, this is a conspiracy theorist, you don't know what you're talking about, I'll leave a link to this article if you want to read through it, where his direct quote here in his speech given basically to a joint Chinese-American delegation here in China, saying, quote, in order to cement this robust partnership, we have to go beyond close ties between Washington and Beijing, which we're working on every day, go beyond it to include all levels of government, go beyond it to include classrooms and laboratories, athletic fields, and boardrooms. And he even advocated for closer ties between the U.S. and CCP on the military front, saying, quote, That's why it's also important that our military leaders work together. Get to know one another, you know? Come on, man. I added that part. Not just our political leaders, but our military leaders. Come on, man. I added that part again. But look, this is what it is, man. Now I'm talking like Joe Biden. No, this is what you need to be focused on and understanding in relation to all of this. So I just thought I'd share that with you. And yeah, you do need to reconcile how Japan got through it in such a way that we couldn't. That's really what it comes down to, right? So the next one here, Q says, expanding on the last drop, USA versus Japan, apply this article, and it gives us this Forbes article talking about the most important coronavirus statistic is that 43% of U.S. deaths are from 0.06% of the population. Now, how is that possible? Well, it's talking about the fact that nursing homes and assisted living facilities are where over 2.1 million Americans, representing 0.62% of the U.S. population, reside. And this is where you're seeing the highest number of deaths come from. You're seeing 43% of the deaths coming from these places. So ask yourself this simple question. Is this all just a coincidence, right? Q says, quote, from the article, let that sink in. 42% of all COVID-19 deaths are taking place in facilities that house 0.62% of the population, nursing homes. Why did our nursing home population suffer a direct hit regarding COVID-19 deaths? New York and New Jersey governor orders push COVID-19 positive elderly nursing homes, U.S. naval ship comfort capacity, hospital capacity. What other Democrat governor mandated similar same orders? Ask yourself a very simple question. Was it known, common sense, and early medical reports, elderly community most at risk? Why would 4 Democrat governors push COVID-19, COVID-2 infected patients into safe nursing homes? Ignorance is a choice. Yeah. So there you go. You know, at what point do we look at these people and ask ourselves, is it a crime what they did to these endangered populations by exposing them to this virus, by making these draconian orders that forced sick people to go be with healthy people who were the most vulnerable? And remember, this is all taking place while you have the fake news like Chris Cuomo on CNN joking with his brother who's involved with this about how big his nose is and using props that Carrot Top would be using, a comedian. These people are comedians. They're joke. They are a joke. And they are the ones telling us that we're crazy conspiracy theorists when they won't take 1 second to look at the stories that we are continually presenting facts on a regular basis, including this one. And we will not back down. We will not have our ability to speak out against this injustice just be extinguished by some, fat cat in a suit in downtown New York or downtown DC or LA. No. That's not how this story ends, and the United States is going to stand up against this, and I just think it's going to be pretty incredible when this information comes out. But I'm asking you, what do you think? Leave your thoughts down below. Do you think that the orders that were pushing these infected patients back into these nursing homes to be exposed to the most vulnerable populations in our country that resulted in this huge spike in deaths, do you think that this is negligence? Do you think it's ignorance? Do you think it's negligent homicide? I'm asking this question because this is something that we really are going to have a discussion about as we get further away from this pandemic and hopefully past the election, which is what this is all about, it seems anyway, right? The next one here, expanding on the last drop, USA versus Japan, apply 43% of 100% nursing home deaths, CDC conflate 34% to 57% COVID-19 deaths data include pneumonia, influenza. So they're conflating pneumonia with the COVID-19 because even if they don't test positive, they're allowing doctors to write on the death certificate it was possible COVID-19, which is counted as a COVID-19 death. Yeah. Average pneumonia influenza deaths per season. Why is the data constantly changing past? Sometimes a Wayback Machine can find many Easter eggs. CDC data then versus now. Ignorance is a choice. Q. So I think that was a clue to the Anons to start going back using the internet Wayback Machine and look at the CDC site for statistics about what the flu rate was and look at the yearly statistics about this. And then there was a lot of articles coming out around that time that were showing the skew where you saw influenza, and I'm only laughing at the absurdity. This is not funny at all, but the influenza spiking down while the coronavirus spiked up. So are they conflating the numbers? I don't know. You tell me, but just we're asking questions here. We still have that right in America as far as I last saw. The next one here is a banner that was hung over what would appear to be a New York highway saying, Cuomo killed my mom, that's terrible. And prayers for the individual who went through whatever this is. It's obviously a very, nobody wants to have to go through that. Nobody wants to imagine what that's like. So it's awful. But then Q gives us this townhall.com article saying, no, Michigan Governor Whitmer will not be Biden's running mate. Very interesting. This is bad enough. Governor Andrew Cuomo instituted the dangerous policy that forced nursing homes and long-term care facilities to accept COVID-positive patients against their will. And it's bad enough that this policy appears to have led to the rampant spread of the coronavirus in New York nursing homes and tragically thousands of deaths in those facilities. And then you have to pay to read the rest of this. But since I'm not going to pay these fake news people to tell me about their opinions, in this particular instance, I'm going to have to just rely on you guys out there to, if you want to read this article, go read the rest of it. But let's just hear what Q has to say in relation to this. Q says, at what point should this be reclassified as murder? At what point is ignorance, common sense no longer valid excuse? Evil surrounds us, Q. Look, I don't know anything other than these are important questions, and there is such thing as negligent homicide, and there is when you are vested power, as in the position of governor, and you have the power to make these mandates, and then you make decisions that cost people their lives, you must be held accountable. You don't have immunity, against making ignorant decisions that cost people their lives. Just like, what's happening in this Minnesota thing. If you want my opinion, yeah, the cop should not be sitting on somebody's neck like that. You don't get to summarily kill somebody just because you arrest them, but at the same time, it doesn't make sense to go burn down a city after that. You know what I mean? Like, both are wrong. Two wrongs don't make a right. Evil against evil is not going to result in good. But nobody seems to understand that. I think people need to pick up a Bible. And if you want to hear about the Bible, stick around to the end, because we do a segment at the end called God's Grace is Greater, which is what we really need through these times, in my opinion. But let's get into the next post here. The next post is this New York Post article talking about nursing homes have no right to reject coronavirus patients. This is actually Andrew Cuomo in his own words back on April 23rd of 2020, right? So telling them they have no right to reject coronavirus patients, which led to this spike in deaths, which led to the death of all these people. And they're telling us we can't investigate, we can't ask questions. If you do, your voice gets silenced off social media and you get basically disappeared into the digital gulag, the memory hole, never to be heard from again. That's what this is. Again, Q saying, at what point should this be reclassified as murder? At what point is ignorance, common sense, no longer a valid excuse? Evil surrounds us, Q. Yeah, I agree. And again, we have the same exact post, but here with a different article attached to it. This is actually a letter from the Department of Health, right? This is to nursing homes and rehabilitation hospitals saying that hospitals discharging and admitting patients have to accept the COVID-19 patients who are infected into these facilities. So once again, another one. So we have Michigan, we have New York, we have New Jersey. At what point, Q asks us again, should this be reclassified as murder, negligent homicide, or something to that effect? This is worth investigating at minimum. I don't want people on the news using a giant prop Q-tip to make fun of the governor's nose. I want answers for the lives that were lost, right? But no. We have to use CNN to fact check President Trump's tweets. That's living in insane, bizarro world. Again, Q says the same exact thing and points us to this, right? This is a letter that is to the Inspector General, Cantrell, that requests that the HHS Office of Investigations immediately commence an independent investigation into whether Pennsylvania's Department of Health, right, had contributed to an increase in COVID-19 infections and deaths in Pennsylvania nursing homes and assisted living and elder care. So now we have New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Michigan. At what point right? At what point, Q says, should this be reclassified as an investigation of murder? At what point is their ignorance no longer a valid excuse when the common sense said this was not a good idea? Again, Q goes on here, USA total population 328 million, COVID-19 deaths 100,000 with a lockdown. Japan total population about half that, 126 million, a little less. And it's on a little island, mind you, tiny little island compared to the United States. COVID-19 deaths 850 with no lockdown. 2 + 2 = 5? Q. Something is not adding up here. And we need to get to the bottom of it. We can't let these people get away with this, because this was their attack to get this mail-in voter fraud through. Again, another Breitbart article saying 81% of Minnesota COVID-19 deaths are from nursing homes, but facilities are still allowed to admit positive patients. This is disgusting. These people have to remedy these situations immediately. And again, Q says, the truth is right in front of you. Yeah, it is. So the next one here says information warfare, right? And it links us to this tweet. Now, it looks like Dennis Prager. It's a Fleckus Talks video. It's in front of, I want to say this is in LA, in front of possibly City Hall there, but he's basically talking about, freedom and what it means, and how hydroxychloroquine with zinc seems to work for a lot of people. There are doctors talking about that. Then there's a couple doctors, and seemingly doctors, people in white coats. It's hard to really verify, who are talking about how hydroxychloroquine with zinc is good. Again, I'm not a doctor, and this is not medical advice, but these people who are claimed to be doctors are saying, look, I've been using this stuff for a very long time. It's been used widely for forever. The only time this became controversial is when President Trump said it was a good thing. Then it became a political football that they've been kicking back and forth through the fake news for the last 3 months, trying to make us believe that this is the enemy is a drug, a completely, just an object drug. There's nothing objective drug. There's nothing political about it, but they've politicized it. And they're scared of us reopening America. They're scared of us having a possible cure, because then they can't use the excuse, we need mail-in voting, because they know the only way they win the election is using mail-in voting. So that's what we're up against here, ladies and gentlemen. And Q's pointing it out for us, saying information warfare, Q. And finally, the last Q post that we have, as of the taping of this, is this Fox News article, right, which talks about President Trump. You saw a little clip in the beginning, signing social media executive order that calls for removal of liability protections over censoring. And I'm just going to play you some clips from this, and then we're going to talk about a few other things.
Remove or totally change 230. What I think we can say is we're going to regulate it. It's a provision, and we're going to regulate it. You take a look at this as an example. This was just out. Twitter moments on the Mueller witch hunt. So we won. We were in the right. You see what's happened. It's a total fraud. It was a total fraud. 76-1. Okay, 76-1. You look at it. You think that's fair? Twitter classifies the term illegal alien as hate speech. Illegal alien. And viciously. You look at what China, just article after article. Here's one. This is the arbiter. This guy is the arbiter of what's supposed to go on Twitter. He's the one he thought, and he used CNN as a guide. CNN, which is fake news. He uses CNN as a guide. His name is Yoel Roth, and he's the one that said that mail-in balloting, you look mail-in, no fraud, really? Why don't you take a look all over the country? There's cases all over the country. If we went to mail-in balloting, our election all over the world would look as a total joke. It would be a total joke. There's such fraud and abuse, and you know about harvesting, where they harvest the ballots and they go and grab them and they go to people's houses and they say, sign here. No, it doesn't work out. Now, an absentee ballot, you can't be there or you're sick, and you go and you register and you do all sorts of things to get that ballot, and there's good security measures. But where they send out, like in California, millions and millions of ballots to anybody that's breathing, Anybody in California that's breathing gets a ballot.
But Mr. President, that's not true.
So
California
excuse me, wait a minute, I'm not finished. So here's your man, and that's on Twitter. And the amazing thing is he's wrong. And even no matter who it is, they will admit that he's wrong because there's tremendous controversy on mail-in voting. And I can say this, the Republican Party cannot let it happen.
Well, as you mentioned, Mr. President, one of the things that I found has the broadest bipartisan support these days is the feeling that this provision, Section 230, has been stretched way beyond its original intention, and people feel that on both sides of the aisle. This was adopted 25 years ago to protect a fledgling industry, and its purpose was to allow websites that were serving as essentially bulletin boards for diverse third-party content coming on, to say that you're not responsible for the content of that third-party information. And it also tried to encourage these companies to take down things like child pornography or human trafficking advertising and things by saying if you act to remove this kind of objectionable material, you won't be liable for taking it down. Now it's been completely stretched to allow what have become really behemoths who control a lot of the flow of information in our society to engage in censorship of that information and to act as editors and publishers of the material. So when they put on their own content, like fact-check content onto other people's content, and when they curate their collection, and when they start censoring particular content, including in many cases at the direction of foreign governments like Communist China, they become publishers, and they shouldn't be entitled to the same kind of shield that was set up earlier.
So there you heard it for yourself. President Trump, in his own words, Q says, "At Jack, you were warned, Q." So look, I mean, these people, you know, they want to take away your free speech. They want to try to silence us. They want to use their fact checkers. But ultimately, at the end of the day, these people are just authoritarian. They're little tyrants who have too much power and want to dictate to you how to live your life. So I don't think that we're going to be signing up for that anytime soon. So a few more stories before we go. One of my sources who's been very accurate in the past seems to think that we're going to be seeing some major arrests coming here. And it seems that it might be non-civilian general who is on the chopping block first for a major arrest. And everyone seems to be looking at possibly someone like H.R. McMaster. Remember, this is the guy who fired Ezra Cohen Watnick, who was removed by President Trump, who was obviously a deep state from day one. But I just thought I'd get that out there on the wire. So in case anyone out there is listening, the fake news does listen to this stuff a lot, so they can take the information and know how to run against it. But if they are listening, there you go. Just thought I'd drop that little tidbit on this episode. And, President Trump keeps referencing 186 countries. Now, a lot of people go, oh, well, how could they have planned all this? But really, it's not hard to take a number and to repeat it over and over again, and it's just a number that co-aligns with certain things. But if you go back and start reading from Q-Post 186 forward, it's very fascinating, right? It starts here with this picture of the weirdo Rothschilds and their symbolism, right? Then it talks about you are learning, you needed to push Godspeed, Q, and then it gets into crazy stuff. Here's where it lays it all out, right? This one I thought is interesting, and Anon says the current conclusion is this: the Titanic was where Rothschild screws America by making our money worthless. Then the crash of 29 happens. Then tons of new government, which doesn't fix the problem Rothschild created, but a war helped, right? World War II, CIA, everyone was blackmailed with sex tapes. Then the media was consumed by the CIA. Then the country was forced to this hard left pivot, and the population became puppets, causes uprising by certain patriots like Kennedy, Reagan, Trump, and others, while they managed to kill, or possibly, let's just say, take out Kennedy. We know he did die and was assassinated, and outlast Reagan. Enough lessons were learned that we are now finally ready to clean house and become America again. And first time in about 100 years. Wow. And then it shows us the owl as a symbolism in DC. And then Q says, identify the owl and the symbolism associated with it. And then it talks about how, the world's fighting back and we're destroying this cult. And it talks about the fact that 20% is public and 80% is private. The world would collapse otherwise. Yeah. So think about that next time you think about what President Trump's trying to convey the message to us of that we're in a global war. A lot of it has to be kept private. If it were made public, we would see a global collapse and probably start another world war. I hate to say it, but that's just what it seems to be, right? And if you put these pieces together, it's pretty easy to figure it out. So I'm just throwing that out there for you guys to kind of chew on. That's pretty much it, though. Few more things before we go. I want you guys to come here, watch these videos, share them. Look, they're trying to suppress this content, but you guys break the algorithm by sharing it and leaving your thoughts, theories, and insights below. I want to hear what you guys have to think about everything that we covered here today. Also, I have a few places you can find me on Twitter. The backup Twitter, or the second Twitter for justinformednews.com is @informednews, which they're suppressing all of these. Don't worry about that. And of course, the main page, which is @justinformu. These are great ways to connect with the channel. Also, I have justinformednews.com, the official website for Just Informed Talk. BitChute.com/justinformedtalk is the backup channel. And a couple other ways you can help out the channel are patreon.com is a crowdfunding website. It's a monthly donation. Your support here keeps this channel alive. I couldn't do this regularly without your support. So thank you. And I couldn't do this content. I couldn't compete with these fake news liars and their machines of control without your support, because they've tried to put me out of business. They tried to put this channel out of business. They've taken away all the monetization. They've done everything they can to drive me into the ground. But the one thing they don't understand is that I put everything to God, and God wins in the end. So no matter what they do, they'll never win. And your support is just a symbol of that, and I thank you for it. I also have a goal set up. If you want to make a one-time or anonymous donation, links to everything that we've talked about here today will be in the description below. Now, before we go, I want to do a segment we do at the end of each one of these episodes called God's Grace is Greater, where we talk about God's grace and how it is truly greater. And today, I'm going to share a powerful psalm, right? One out of the book of Psalms, a prayer for deliverance. And this is my prayer for all of us right now amongst such turmoil and evil that surrounds us. Because I understand that in this world, it's easy to focus only on the evil. But if we don't focus on the light, then we're going to lose ourselves in this battle against evil. And I never want to lose myself. I always want to remain tethered to Christ, tethered to what's good and doing the right thing and living honorably with righteousness and integrity for God first and foremost. And I hope that you guys want the same. So here's a prayer for our deliverance, saying, and this is Psalm 54, God, save me by your name and vindicate me by your might. God, hear my prayer. Listen to the words of my mouth. For strangers rise up against me, and violent men seek my life. They have no regard for God. God is my helper. The Lord is the sustainer of my life. He will repay my adversaries for their evil. Because of your faithfulness, annihilate them. I will sacrifice a free will offering to you. I will praise your name, Lord, because it is good. For he has delivered me from every trouble, and my eye has looked down on my enemies. Amen. So just remember that during this time of tumultuous turmoil, that we turn to God. We put our faith in Christ above. We put our faith in the fact that we know we're going to be delivered from our enemies, and eventually God will annihilate them, as it says here. And all we have to do is use our free will to put our lives to God as an offering to Him, right? That's all it is, ladies and gentlemen. Use the free will God has blessed you with to turn your life over to God, and you can do things in this world that you never thought were possible. I can tell you that from experience. It is so possible, but you have to be consistent in prayer and faith and living righteously and doing the right thing when no one's watching, and living humbly with humility and praying to God every day for the courage and strength and wisdom to overcome this adversity. But you can do it. I believe in you, and it starts with a simple prayer. So remember that and share that with your friends and families and people you meet out in the street. Spread the gospel and live righteously. That's my message to you. That's where I'm going to leave it. Thanks for watching this episode. Remember to come here, click the subscribe button and hit it, punch it, tap it, elbow it, whatever. Hit the like button if you guys like this content and want to see me make more. That's it for me. Thanks for watching Just Informed Talk. My name is Craig. Godspeed and God bless each and every one of you, Patriots.